I am Lucas's mother, and this is the hardest story I've ever had to tell. My son disappeared while playing in the playground in front of our house on a seemingly normal afternoon. A moment of distraction, and he simply disappeared. The despair, the pain, the anguish of not knowing where he was, if he was cold, hungry, if he was crying and calling for me. It destroyed me inside. I spent days, weeks, months without sleeping, without eating, without breathing properly. Every strange phone call, every shadow on the street, every unknown voice on the other end of the line was a new torture, another cut in my chest. Before we dive into this breathtaking journey, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are listening to our story from, and prepare to be moved. I remember it like it was yesterday, that sunny summer day, the sky so blue without clouds, and my son's laughter filling the air as he ran barefoot across the playground in front of our house. His name was Lucas, 9 years old, full of life, full of dreams. He was my little one, my pride and joy, my heart beating out of my chest. I sat on the porch, drinking my coffee, watching him climb on those colorful toys, go down the slide, make friends with every child who passed by. He was so sociable, so full of energy. I never imagined that that day, that ordinary afternoon, would be the moment when everything in my life would change forever. I remember I had a shopping list to make, but I decided to wait a little longer, to stay there, enjoying those simple minutes of peace. He would look at me every now and then, wave his hand, shout, "Mommy, look at me here." And I would wave back, smiling. I didn't know that smile would be the last. Minutes passed, maybe half an hour, maybe less. I looked to the side, fiddled with my cell phone, checked some messages, distracted for a moment. When I looked back at the playground, he was no longer there. At first I thought he might have gone to the cafeteria at the end of the street, that maybe he was hiding behind the slide. But no, there was no sign of him. I started calling out, "Lucas! Lucas!" My heart raced, my chest tightened, but I tried to calm myself down. I walked to the swing, to the sand. I looked at the other children, at their mothers, at the little old man who usually read the newspaper on the bench next to me. Nothing. No one had seen. No one knew. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. I ran down the street, knocking on doors. "Have you seen my son? He's blonde. He was wearing a blue t-shirt and jean shorts. He was just here." People looked at me. Some asked his name. Others tried to help, but no one had seen anything. I started to sweat. My chest felt like it was going to explode. I ran to the corner, shouting his name, running like crazy, my heart racing, my legs weak. I went into the bakery, the pharmacy, and asked the guy at the ice cream truck. No one had seen anything. It was as if the world had swallowed my son. Hours passed and my anguish only grew. I called the police, my voice shaking, my hand sweating, the phone almost falling out of my hand. They asked me to stay calm, to describe what he was wearing, if he had any birthmarks, any health problems. I could barely speak. My throat was dry, my mouth was bitter. The world was spinning. When the police arrived, I expected that somehow he would come running, saying, "Mommy, it was just a joke." But that didn't happen. They started asking questions, looking around, talking to people. I saw one of them writing things down in a notebook, another talking on the radio. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake everyone and ask why no one was running after my son, why no one saw him, why no one cared like I did. Hours turned into days, and days into weeks. They put up posters with his picture on lampposts, in bakeries, in schools. The press showed up. Another missing child. That's what they called my Lucas. Another one. But he wasn't just another one. He was my son. The boy who made me laugh when he said he was going to be an astronaut. The boy who was afraid to sleep with the lights off. The boy who loved strawberry ice cream and had a scar on his right knee from a fall from his bike. Every night that passed, I looked at his bed and felt a hole in my chest. I cried in secret, because I didn't want people to see me like this. But there was a scream inside me, a scream that would never end. And then, strange calls started coming in. Anonymous voices. Some said they had seen a boy who looked like Lucas in a certain place. Others just breathed on the other end of the line, in silence. I didn't know what was worse, the silence or the false hope. Every time the phone rang, my heart skipped a beat. I ran, answered it, prayed to hear his voice saying, "Mommy, come get me." But it wasn't him. It was never him. I felt like time was killing me, day after day, a piece of me dying a little more. The police told me to stay calm, to have faith. But how can you stay calm when you don't know where your son is, when you don't know if he's eating, if he's cold, if he's crying, if he's scared? I couldn't eat anymore. I couldn't sleep anymore. I just wanted my son back. I started to distrust everything and everyone. The neighbor who always offered me candy, the guy at the ice cream truck, even the other children's mothers. I looked at everyone as if they were suspects, as if anyone could be responsible for ripping Lucas out of my life. And with each passing day, hope mixed with despair. Because no one disappears like that, without a trace. No one just vanishes from the world. So where was he? Who was with him? Was he suffering, hurt, crying for me? I needed to know. I needed the truth, no matter how harsh it was. But the truth. The truth was a silence that screamed in my mind, an absence that hurt more than any blow. I looked at the swing in the playground, still swaying gently in the wind, and it seemed like a mockery. It was as if the whole world was moving, except me. I was frozen in that moment, trapped in that instant, screaming my son's name into the void, waiting for an answer that never came. Weeks turned into months. Each day was a new torment. I began to notice the pitying looks from people, the whispers as I passed by on the street. Some said that I should move on, that maybe it would be better to accept that he would not come back. But how could I accept that? How could I accept that my 9-year-old son, who played on the playground, had been ripped from my life and that I would never see him again? I couldn't. I refused to believe that he was just another statistic, just another photo stuck on a pole with the word "missing" in big, cold letters. I would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of the door opening in my head, as if he were running in, saying, "Mommy, I'm home." Sometimes I thought I could hear him laughing in the backyard, the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. I would run to the door, to the window, but there was no one there, only silence, only emptiness. I began to put away his clothes as if it were a ritual, folding each shirt, smelling each item, trying to hold on to his scent as if that would bring me some relief. I kept his favorite blue toy car under my pillow. Sometimes I would lie on his bed, curled up, crying softly, apologizing for not being able to protect him. And the police seemed tired. They said they were doing everything they could, that they had new leads, but everything seemed vague, distant. One of them even told me that after 3 months, the chances were slim. I didn't want to hear that. I couldn't accept that. He was my son. He was somewhere. He needed me. I started investigating on my own. I started walking the streets, visiting strange neighborhoods, talking to homeless people, people who lived in trailers, anyone I wanted to talk to. I showed everyone his picture. "Have you seen this boy? He's my son. He was at the playground and now he's gone." Some looked at me with pity, others said yes, that maybe they had seen something, but nothing concrete. I even followed a man once, a man with a beard who I thought had looked at me strangely. I followed him through dark streets, my heart pounding so hard I felt like I was going to faint. In the end, he just went into a bar and disappeared inside. I felt ridiculous, but I couldn't stop. I had to try something. I started thinking about everything I could have done differently. What if I hadn't picked up my phone at that moment? What if I had called him inside? What if I had stood there, watching his every step? But the if is a prison that consumed me day and night. And yet, even with all this pain, I couldn't give up. I saw news reports on TV, stories of children who disappeared and returned years later, and I held on to that. I told myself, he's going to come back. He's going to knock on this door. I'm going to open it, and he's going to be there. But time passed. His birthday arrived. I bought a cake and put candles on it, even though I knew he wouldn't be there to blow them out. I sang happy birthday to myself, crying, my voice cracking, while the candle flame flickered in the darkness of the room. It was as if that flame was the last thread of hope I had. And then the call came. An unfamiliar, hoarse male voice. He said, "If you want to see your son again, listen to me carefully." My heart nearly stopped. I tried to ask, but he told me to shut up. His voice was cold, calculated. He gave me an address, a street I knew, and then he hung up. I was shaking from head to toe. I called the police, but they said it might be a prank call, that I should be careful. I couldn't wait. I grabbed the keys, got in the car, and drove without thinking, my hands sweating on the steering wheel. When I got there, it was an abandoned warehouse, with broken windows and graffiti on the walls. I screamed my son's name over and over, my voice echoing in the emptiness, but there was no one there. Only the sound of the wind, whistling through the cracks. Then, on the ground, near a pile of trash, I saw it. It was his blue car. That blue car he loved, that he never let go of. I took it in my hands, shaking, and collapsed on the ground, crying as if my whole body was made of pain. I felt that he had been there, that he had called me somehow. But why? Who was playing with my hope? I knew that the car was his. I knew. But where was Lucas? And at that moment, I knew I had to keep going, that the cart was a sign. Someone had taken my son. Someone was messing with me. I stood up, wiped the tears away with the back of my hands, and decided I wouldn't stop until I found him, no matter how long it took, no matter what I had to do. Lucas was my son, and I wasn't going to let him be just another faded photo on a wall. After that night in the warehouse, I began to live as if I were in a never-ending nightmare. The days became just an endless count of hours, each one heavier than the last. I woke up every morning with the same question burning inside me. Where is Lucas? And with each night that arrived, his absence seemed more unbearable, like a silent scream that echoed inside me. The people around me tried to help, but I knew that no one understood. They told me to rest, to take care of myself. But how can anyone rest, knowing that their child could be somewhere, afraid, suffering, waiting for you? I started going to places I would never have set foot in before. I went into dark alleys, forgotten neighborhoods, makeshift shelters where the smell of mold and despair mixed. I talked to people that society prefers to ignore: addicts, homeless people, prostitutes, men with lost looks and troubled pasts. I showed Lucas's photo to each of them, asked if they had seen that boy, if anyone had mentioned a child being taken by force, if they had noticed any strange cars driving around the streets. Sometimes I got blank stares, other times false promises of help in exchange for money. I started selling things from my house, the television, the microwave, even the wedding rings, so I could pay for any information. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted my son back. I remember one night when I was alone in his room, holding the blue toy car, trying to remember the last time he had played with it. I closed my eyes and heard his laughter, as if he were there. I opened my eyes, and for a moment I almost screamed, because it was as if I could see him again, sitting on the floor, his little hands holding the toy, his eyes shining. But it was just my mind betraying me. I knew he wasn't there. I knew that was my longing swallowing me alive. And then, a week after the call from the warehouse, another one came. I was at the grocery store, trying to buy something to eat, because my body was already too weak. My cell phone rang. The number was restricted. I answered it with my hand shaking, and the same cold, calm voice said, "You want your son back, don't you? Then stop involving the police." I tried to ask where he was, what they wanted from me, but the voice interrupted. "You will receive instructions. If you do everything right, you will see him again." And the call ended. I stood there in the middle of the grocery store, people staring at me, the light seeming brighter, everything spinning around me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should trust them, if this was a game, if this was real. But the fear of losing my son forever was greater than any doubt. I knew I would do anything. I would give my life without thinking twice if it would bring Lucas back. I began to wait for the next call. Every ring of the phone made me jump. Every notification made me tremble. I had become a shadow of my former self, a ghost haunting my own house. I barely ate, barely slept, barely spoke to anyone. My husband. He tried to be strong, but I could see in his eyes that he was broken too. We could barely talk without the pain engulfing us. Sometimes he would go out for hours, and I knew he was trying to find his son too, in his own way. We were two pieces of human beings floating in a sea of despair. And then, one night, another call. This time, the voice said, "Tomorrow, at 3 a.m, abandoned train station. Go alone. If you bring anyone, you'll never see your son again." I didn't know if it was real. I didn't know if it was a trap, but I had no choice. I spent the night awake, sitting in the kitchen, my hands shaking, my heart racing. At 2:30, I got in the car and left. The city was deserted, the streets empty, as if the whole world had stopped. Every headlight seemed to swallow me. Every shadow seemed to watch me. When I arrived at the abandoned station, the place was dark, damp, with a strong smell of rusty iron and dirt. I got out of the car with shaky legs, holding Lucas's photo against my chest, as if it would protect me. I walked around the place, calling his name, my voice echoing through the empty space. Each step felt heavy, as if the floor would give way at any moment. And then, in the corner, a cardboard box, dirty and torn, and inside it, a pair of sneakers. They were Lucas's sneakers. The sneakers I had bought a month before he disappeared, with dinosaurs drawn on the side. I recognized them immediately. I knelt down, picked them up, and the smell of earth and dust invaded me. Tears began to fall, and I was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. And then I heard a noise. A crack, like someone was there, watching. My heart froze. I looked around, but I saw nothing. The silence was so deep that even my sobs seemed too loud. I stood there, holding his sneakers in my hands, feeling like the most helpless person in the world. I knew he was somewhere. Someone was playing with me, playing with a mother's pain. And I didn't know how far this would go, but I knew I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I would go all the way. After that night at the station, I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, about to fall. The smell of Lucas's sneakers still clung to my hands, like a cruel reminder that he had been there, so close, yet so out of reach. I slept on the couch, with my sneakers clutched to my chest, as if they were the only thing connecting me to him. When I woke up, the morning light filled the room, but all I felt was darkness. My husband came into the room, saw me hugging my sneakers, and for the first time in a long time, he cried. He cried loudly, as if the weight of everything had exploded inside him. He hugged me, and we both lay there, motionless, broken, breathing each other's pain. I wanted to believe that it meant something, that someone had left the sneakers there to give me a clue. But I also wondered, what if it was just a cruel joke? What if someone wanted to torture me, to slowly tear away any hope from me? I no longer knew what was real and what was imagination. I started seeing Lucas everywhere, in the reflection in the window, in the shadows passing by on the street, in the sound of the gate opening. My mind was falling apart. I knew I needed help, but I couldn't ask for it. I just wanted him back. That was all. The calls continued. Each time, the voices seemed colder, more distant, as if they were just playing with my pain. They would say things like, "He misses you. He misses you. He asks about you." It was like they knew exactly where to move to destroy me. And I would beg them, "Please tell me where he is. I'll do anything. Anything." But they would just hang up. I started to think, who would do this? Who would have so much hate, so much evil? I tried to remember all the people I had ever met. Was it someone close to me? Someone who knew me? I started to look suspiciously at neighbors, my husband's co-workers, even distant relatives. I searched social media, looked for old messages, anything. I started to retrace Lucas's steps that day, going to the playground several times, trying to imagine what could have happened at that moment when I looked away. I knew he had been taken. I could feel it. There was no way he could have left alone. There was no way no one could have seen anything. And then another call. The voice, even lower, almost a whisper, said, "Today, at 10 o'clock at night, Jasmine Street, number 32. Come alone." I didn't know what to expect, but I went. I would go to hell if I had to. When I arrived, it was an old house, with a rusty iron gate and a garden overgrown with weeds. The porch light flickered, creating strange shadows. I went inside, my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to come out of my mouth. The hallway smelled of mold. The floor creaked under my feet. I called for Lucas, my voice trembling. "Son? Is it Mommy? Lucas? Where are you, my love?" The silence swallowed me. At the end of the hallway, a door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly, afraid of what I might find. The room was empty. There was only a chair in the center, and on it, a blue t-shirt. It was the t-shirt he was wearing the day he disappeared. I knelt down, picked up the t-shirt, and his scent was still there. I felt the world spin, everything blurring, pain tearing through my chest. That's when I heard it. A muffled sound, like a sob coming from somewhere in the house. I jumped up, fear mixing with hope. "Lucas? Is that you? Where are you?" I ran toward the sound, stumbling, almost falling. The sound came from the basement. The door was locked. I knocked, screamed, kicked the wood until my hands and feet bled. "Give me back my son, please. I'm here. I'm here." But no one answered. Only the muffled sound, fading away, like a whisper disappearing in the wind. I fell to my knees, my arms limp, my breathing uneven. I felt him there, so close, yet so far away. And in that moment, I knew. They were playing with me, playing with my pain, messing with my heart, testing how much I could bear. I staggered out of there, my blue t-shirt clutched tightly to my chest, my legs giving out, my heart bleeding. And as I walked down the deserted street, with the dark sky above me, I could only think of one thing. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to give up. They might try to break me, but I was going to keep going. Because Lucas was waiting for me, and I was his mother. I was the only person in the world who could save him. That night, as I walked through the empty streets, holding Lucas's shirt as if it were the last hope in a world that was falling apart, something inside me changed. It wasn't just pain anymore. It wasn't just despair anymore. It was anger. It was a fury that was growing in my chest, burning like fire, telling me that I could no longer be just a spectator of my own tragedy. I had to act. I had to go all the way, even if it cost me my life. Because if they thought they could break me, that they could play with a mother's pain, they were wrong. They didn't know what I was capable of. I returned home that morning, my hands covered in dried blood, my mind spinning in a spiral. I locked myself in Lucas's room, hugged his toys, his clothes, his memories, and there, lying on the cold floor, I promised, "I will find you, my son. I swear, I will not rest until I bring you back." The next morning, with dark circles under my eyes and red, I went to the police station. I showed them the shirt, told them about the call, the address, the noise coming from the basement. They heard me, but the look in their eyes killed me. It was the look of someone who had already lost hope, of someone who thought this was just another sad story among so many. I didn't accept that. I started gathering all the information I had. The shirt, the sneakers, the stroller, the phone calls, the schedules. I took notes, cross-referenced the data, drew maps. I became a detective of my own pain. I spent hours in front of the computer, researching similar cases, studying patterns, connecting dots that perhaps no one had seen. I even joined forums of people who had missing children, shared my story, listened to reports. I discovered that there were more cases like Lucas's, Children who disappeared in seemingly simple situations, with no explanation, no witnesses. A name started to appear in some posts. A man with a serious criminal record, accused of solicitation and abuse, but never arrested due to lack of evidence. A name that seemed to haunt these stories like a ghost. Roberto Santana. I didn't know if it was real or if it was just my paranoia, but I grabbed onto that possibility like a plank in a shipwreck. I started asking questions, investigating, looking for clues about him. I discovered that he had worked as a delivery man in some neighborhoods, that he knew the area well, and that he had his own car. And then, one afternoon, I was standing in front of a school and saw a car that made me freeze. A white car with tinted windows that I was sure I had seen driving near the playground the day Lucas disappeared. I wrote down the license plate and followed the car discreetly, my hands shaking, my heart racing. It stopped at a simple house with a low gate and an unkempt garden. I parked a few meters away, watching from afar. He got out and looked around, as if he had something to hide. I stood there for hours, waiting, watching, until, at one point, he got out again, got in the car, and drove away. I got out and approached the house. The gate was closed, but the back window was ajar. I knew it was dangerous, but the fear of losing my son was much greater than the fear of anything that could happen to me. I jumped the gate, entered the yard, and slowly pushed open the window. The smell that came from inside made me almost vomit. Mold, dirt, something rotten. The house was dark, silent, as if it held secrets that no one should know. I called Lucas's name, softly, my voice shaking. "Son? Mommy is here. Can you hear me?" Nothing. Just the sound of my own heart beating in my ears. I walked in, my feet heavy, each step echoing like a drum. There were piles of garbage bags, cardboard boxes, the remains of broken toys. And then, in the corner, something made me stop. A notebook. A blue notebook, with drawings of dinosaurs on the cover. I picked it up, my hands shaking. It was Lucas's notebook. His name was written on the first page, in crooked, innocent handwriting. I flipped through the pages, and my world fell apart. There were drawings made by him, but in between them, words scrawled in strange handwriting, phrases like, "Don't tell anything," "Stay quiet," "Mommy can't know." I felt my body freeze, my stomach churn. Was that a message? A cry for help? I ran out of there, my hands shaking, the notebook clutched to my chest. I called the police, screamed, cried, begged them to come to the house. They arrived, cordoned off the place, and began to search everything. But the man, Roberto, had disappeared. It was as if he had evaporated. Once again, he was one step ahead. And I knew, with every cell in my body, that he was with my son, that Lucas was alive, somewhere, waiting for me to save him. I knew, because a mother knows, and I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to rest. I was going to go all the way, all the way, all the way to the last tears, because my son was out there, and he needed me. From that day on, I was no longer just a desperate mother. I was a hunter. I knew I was dealing with someone cruel, someone who played with other people's pain, who liked to manipulate, to make us bleed inside. And I knew that if I didn't go all the way, no one would do it for me. The police began to act more intensely. They searched Roberto's house, took the notebook, took fingerprints. But with each day that passed without news of Lucas, the pain grew like a knife spinning inside me. I knew he was out there, that he was waiting for me. And I couldn't fail. The nights grew longer, the days emptier. I kept getting those calls, hoarse voices, sharp words. They said, "Do you really think you'll find him? You don't know anything. He's closer than you think." Each sentence was like torture. I tried to trace the calls. I tried to get help from friends, acquaintances, even experts. But the clues were always slippery, as if they knew exactly how to escape. I began to walk the streets like a shadow, entering alleys, asking questions, searching in places where no one dared to look. I talked to homeless people, to women who sold their bodies, to boys who made a living from petty theft. I promised them money, food, help, anything if they gave me some information. One night, sitting on the sidewalk with a group of people who lived in makeshift shacks, a man with a gray beard and a lost look in his eyes grabbed my arm and said, "I saw him. A little blonde boy in a blue shirt. They took him from a white car. I saw him, but I was afraid to say anything. My whole body froze. I was shaking so much that I could barely write down what he was saying. I asked where, when, with whom. He said it was near the playground, on the day Lucas disappeared, and that the car had passed by several times before, as if it were waiting for the right opportunity. That confirmed what I already felt. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a simple oversight. It was premeditated. They planned to take Lucas, and if they planned it, maybe he was still alive, somewhere. Trapped, hurt, but alive. I clung to that hope like it was the only thing keeping me breathing. I went to the police station and told them what the man had told me, but they seemed skeptical. They said it was an unsubstantiated story, that it could be a fabrication, the delusions of a homeless person. But I knew. I saw Lucas's image every time I closed my eyes. I dreamed of him, trapped in some dark place, calling out to me, his voice weak, his gaze lost, waiting for me to find him. And then something I didn't expect happened. A package arrived at my door. No sender, no warning. I opened it with shaking hands, and inside was a VHS tape, one of those old ones that were already worn out, and a note written in capital letters. "Watch it, and don't do anything stupid." My heart almost stopped. I didn't think twice. I ran to the old television that still had a VCR, put in the tape, and when the image started to appear, my legs gave out. It was Lucas, my son, in what looked like a dirty room with peeling walls and an old mattress on the floor. He was thin. His hair was longer. His eyes were scared. But it was him, my boy. He looked into the camera as if he knew I would be watching, and he whispered, "Mommy, I'm scared. Mommy, come get me." And then a voice in the background said, "Shut up," and the image cut out. I screamed, threw the controller on the floor, fell to my knees. I sobbed. I screamed, despair tearing at my throat. But there, in that video, was the proof I needed. My son was alive. They were with him. And they had sent me that video to tell me that the game wasn't over yet. I knew time was running out. I knew they were giving me a warning, or maybe an ultimatum. I needed to act. I needed to save my son. Because now I knew for sure. Lucas was waiting for me. And he was waiting for me to be strong enough to bring him home. That night, after watching the video, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours sitting on the floor, staring at the black screen of the television, as if his image was still there, recorded, alive. Lucas's face, thin, pale, his eyes full of fear, his voice trembling. "Mommy, come get me." I repeated those words in my head like a mantra. My entire body ached, as if every part of me had been ripped open and left raw. I cried, sobbed, trembled, but in the midst of that abyss of pain, something inside me burned. I knew they wanted to break me. They wanted to see me implode in despair, but I wouldn't let them. I wouldn't let them. The next day, I went back to the police station with the tape in my hands, begging them to act. They reviewed the video, but all they could say was that they needed more information, that they couldn't identify the location, that the man's face in the background was indistinct, that it was impossible to recognize him. It was always the same thing. We're investigating. I wanted to scream, to pull up those tables, to shake every police officer until they understood that this was no ordinary case. This was my son. This was my world shattered before my eyes. I began to act on my own. I took the video, frame by frame, and tried to find any clue. A crack in the wall, a background sound, a detail that might tell me where he was. I spent sleepless nights, with the computer open, pausing the image every second, zooming in, trying to decipher what seemed like an impossible puzzle. It was during one of these analyses that I saw something. A small label stuck to the wall, almost invisible, dirty, worn. But there, in almost faded letters, was written the name of a paint company. An old company, which I remembered having seen in an abandoned industrial area of the city. My heart raced. I called every possible place, until a man answered and said that yes, that company had an old, deactivated branch, a huge warehouse that had been used as a warehouse, but that it had been closed for years, now abandoned, forgotten. I knew it was there. I could feel it. That voice inside me. My mother's instinct was screaming that Lucas was there. I didn't call the police. I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't risk them taking him away again. I got in my car and drove to the location, every kilometer feeling like a punch in the stomach. I arrived at the warehouse as the sun was starting to set, the sky painted orange and red, as if the whole world was on fire. The place was huge, surrounded by high walls, with weeds growing on all sides. The windows were broken, the gate rusted. I turned off the car, took a deep breath, and forced myself to believe that I could make it. I walked inside, my steps slow, my heart racing, my hands shaking. The silence was so heavy that it seemed like every sound, the creak of the floor, the squeak of a door, was a scream. I stepped forward, calling softly, "Lucas, son, Mommy's here." My chest hurt so much I could barely breathe. I entered a dark hallway, the smell of dust and rust invading my nose. And then, I heard it. A low noise, like a muffled cry. My eyes filled with tears. "Lucas? Lucas, my love, is that you?" I followed the sound, desperation quickening my steps. I reached a locked metal door. I knocked, screamed, kicked. "Lucas, talk to me, my son. Mommy is here." On the other side, I heard his voice, weak and broken. "Mommy." It was him. It was my son. I knocked hard, screamed until my throat burned. I looked for something to break down the door, found a rusty iron bar, and started hitting it with all the strength I had. With each blow, I felt my whole body hurt, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had to get Lucas out of there. And then I heard footsteps, heavy, fast, the sound of someone running. I froze, fear freezing my blood. I looked back and saw a shadow coming towards me. The man, the same one I had seen in the video. He stared at me with a cold smile, his eyes dark and empty. I screamed, raised the iron bar, and he advanced towards me. The world became a blur. I screamed Lucas's name. I screamed with a strength I didn't even know I had. The man pushed me. I fell, but I got up again, desperate, hitting the iron bar, screaming, crying, each blow a scream of pain, of anger, of desperation. He backed away, gasping, and ran. I tried to follow, but the sound of Lucas's crying pulled me back. I banged on the door with everything I had left until it finally gave way. When I opened it, I saw my son, my little Lucas. Dirty, skinny, his eyes puffy from crying, his shirt torn. He looked at me, and his eyes filled with tears. "Mommy." He fell into my arms, and I hugged him like it was the last thing I would ever do. I was shaking, crying, kissing his face, each tear falling as an apology for every day he was away from me. "I'm here, my love. Mommy is here. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." The sound of sirens began to get closer. Someone had called the police. I didn't know how or who, but at that moment, nothing else mattered. I had my son in my arms. I had him back. But even then, deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. That man was still out there, and the scar he left on us would never go away. The moment the police entered the warehouse and found us there, me kneeling on the floor hugging Lucas, is a memory that will never leave my mind. I cried so much that I could barely speak, and he, my little one, clung to me as if he were afraid that if he let go, it would all be just a dream, an endless nightmare. The police approached, cautiously, looking around, guns drawn, as if they expected the kidnapper to appear again. But he had already disappeared, evaporated like a shadow. One of them helped me get up. Another picked Lucas up and started asking questions, but I couldn't hear them properly. It was as if the world had become muffled, as if everything was a distant echo, and only my son's heart beating against mine was real. They called an ambulance, and I went with him, holding his hand the whole time, as if letting go was a possibility I could no longer allow. At the hospital, the doctors examined him, took blood, checked for signs of abuse. I saw the marks on his arm, small bruises, scratches, as if he had tried to fight, as if he had screamed until his voice failed. Each mark was a stab in my chest. I cried silently, stroking his hair, saying softly, "Mommy is here, my love. I will never leave you alone again." The following days were a whirlwind. News spread. Journalists showed up at the hospital door. People I had never seen before came to hug me, to tell me they had prayed for me, that they were rooting for me. But I didn't want to know any of that. I just wanted my son. And there he was, quiet, fragile, but alive. I sat down next to him on the bed, holding his hand, and asked, my heart aching, "What happened, my love? Who was that man?" He looked at me, his eyes full of tears, and spoke softly. He said he was my friend, that he wanted to show me a puppy. But when I got in the car, he locked the door. I screamed, "Mommy." I screamed so much, but no one heard. My tears ran down my face as he told me, his voice weak, each word like a punch to my chest. He took me to a dark place. He said you didn't want to see me anymore, that I was a bad boy, but I knew it was a lie, Mommy. I knew you would find me. I cried, hugged him so tight it felt like I could crush him, and said, "Never believe those lies again, my love. Never again. You are everything to me. I have looked for you every day. I love you more than anything." The police kept investigating, but the man was never found. They made sketches, released pictures, searched through old records, but he seemed to have disappeared. It was as if he had evaporated. That haunted me, because he was still out there, free, and could do this again to another child, to another family. I was never the same again. Neither was my son. He had nightmares, woke up crying, scared, asking if I was going to disappear too. I tried to be strong. I tried to show him that life could go back to normal, but deep down, I knew nothing would be the same, because the day he disappeared was the day I disappeared too. A part of me stayed in that playground, looking at that empty bench, waiting for him to come running back, screaming, "Mommy, look what I did." We moved on, but every laugh, every hug, every word was marked by a silent fear. I looked at him and knew that the time we had was precious, because now I understood how much everything can change in a second. I told this story because I know there are other mothers living this nightmare right now. Mothers who wake up every day with the hope that their children will come back. Mothers who look into the void and still see their children's smiles. I know what that's like. I know how much it hurts. And I just want to say, never give up. Never stop searching. Because I found my son. I brought him back. And every second of fighting was worth it. But I also know that many people's stories don't have that ending. And that's why we can never forget. We can never let our guard down. Because monsters like that man are out there. And we, as mothers, as fathers, as a society, have to be vigilant. Because a second of carelessness could be the beginning of a nightmare that no one deserves to live. I'm Lucas's mother, and I'll never let anyone forget that. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. Share your opinion in the comments. Do you know anyone who has gone through something similar? Together we are stronger. New exciting stories every day.